Hello, computer gamers. This is Insomniac Andrew, and this is the second episode of the Dota to League series, learning about the game of League of Legends, basically, and how it is for anybody making the transition from Dota 2 to League of Legends. In case the game stops being playable because all the updates and whatever, the game just slows down too much and it's just too hard to play for the computer. So, the system requirements aren't too terrible on this game. Now, I wanted to talk about a couple of the summoner spells this episode, and talk about a couple more next maybe. So, okay, Ignite is one where it's doing true damage. So that's different from physical or magical in that it's not affected by armor or magic resistance or anything like that. So it's basically like pure damage, I guess, from Dota. So not really a huge deal. But anyways, this particular spell is cool because it cuts any heals in half. So that's pretty nice. It's got a relatively decent range. I want to say all the summoner spells that you are supposed to cast on an enemy champion, they all have about the same range, I think. I could be wrong, but anyway, when you hover over the icon, it will show you in a circle what the actual range is, so that helps. You could also press the hotkey for the summoner spell, and that'll show the circle as well. Now, moving on, the other one that's interesting is Smite. Now, Smite has had a lot of changes to it lately. It's I would say it's probably the best summoner spell, and it's especially good for junglers, but for whatever reason people only get it when they're junglers. I guess it's just because a lot of the others are just so good it's hard not to grab them. But so here's what Smite does. Smite, first of all, allows you to buy jungle item Hunter's Machete, which upgrades into these other items, which then upgrade into those enchantment items, right? So, with the different colored gems. Now, this is called a jungle item, and it gives you basically what you call neutral creeps in Dota 2 is what we call monsters in League of Legends. So the in every jungle camp, or even if it's technically not a camp because there's like the river monster, there's one monster that's the biggest. Sometimes there's only one monster, then that's the biggest. That's fine. But anyways, that's called the large monster, obviously. So that gives you extra gold, and then as you're attacking these monsters, you're actually gaining health and mana every second while you're fighting them or they're fighting you, however that concept works in combat. I'm not too keen on the mechanic there, but it seems pretty simple and straightforward overall. Now, see, that's what's interesting. You can't actually buy this relatively cheap item unless you have Smite. Now, the jungle is actually a pretty sizable place, and it's very common for champions to, especially in the mid to late game, assuming somebody doesn't have the purple enchantment on their jungle item, their teammates are generally free to clear jungle camps. If they don't have time to get around to doing it, then that's fine. The one with Smite. So, I guess the main thing I want to mention is picking up these upgrades to the Hunter's Machete will upgrade your smite, actually. And this is actually a new development. It didn't always used to be this way, but Riot has been trying to improve the game in general, and I guess basically make the jungler, give him what do I want to say, like more control over the game, I guess. So that's cool. But I'd like to say it would be interesting to see supports or top laners or even mid players, whatever, just picking up smite. I think that would be a viable strategy sometimes, because with an extra smite you can utilize these upgrades, which are pretty cool. Like the purple enchantment, for example. I talked about that. I said that killing large monsters increases the magic damage of this item by +1. So this by itself kind of indicates that, like, if you can get one guy as many jungle camps as possible, he's gonna get more and more and more damage. So let's see, what am I trying to say here? This by itself is nothing too special as far as wanting to have more of it, but the chilling smite part is the interesting thing. So you could, for example, get like the green one if you want a bulkier champion, because it gives you extra health, obviously, and it also gives you the tenacity. So you don't have to well, of course I wouldn't even get the gray stuff. Where's the there we go, blue with green gem. See, that's what I mean. So you could get a chilling smite on multiple champions, and allows you to, when it's upgrading your smite, you can cast it on enemy champions, and so it steals movement speed. So it's kind of like Visage's first skill, basically, is what chilling smite is. So they lose 20% movement speed and you gain 20% movement speed, or you gain whatever they lost. I'm not sure exactly the mechanic on that. It is actually pretty new. So, but it's really sweet. It's a very effective ability to have. It's like an extra slow, whether your champion has a slow or not. It's pretty useful. So I like that. Although we already have Exhaust as a summoner spell that slows movement speed by 30%, but doesn't actually give you movement speed. It also reduces armor and magic resist, and it reduces their damage dealt by 40%. And this is all for 2.5 seconds. So as you can see, this summoner spell does a lot already. So technically it does do more than that smite upgraded the chilling smite would do if you casted it on a champion. But smite is still a really strong summoner spell for more than just the reason that I stated, more than just the fact that there's these different effects. Like there's the challenging smite as well, which can reduce the damage to you by 20% and give them a track, so you can see where they're at. It's pretty cool, although it only lasts for 3 seconds, so the tracking part's really not all that useful, actually. I think they need to buff the duration. But or wait a minute, no, it's 6 seconds. Well, it's still not very long. I feel like it should be a bit longer, like 9 or 12. But anyway, let's see what I was gonna say. Okay, so what else makes Smite so good, I guess? Alright, well, there's no actual section for you to learn about monsters in the client, which is quite unfortunate. I'll have to tell you quite a bit about monsters anyway. So, I'm not sure if it's only large monsters, it probably is, but when you cast Smite on a monster, you can immediately get some kind of a buff from them. So if you cast it on the poisonous toad, giant toad thing, then it gives you like a poison armor. So when any unit, including the toad, attacks you, it will take damage. So, and of course the toad has this ability already, so as you attack it, you take damage. At least if I remember right, that's how it works. Anyway, so then after you destroy the toad, you've already smited him, then you can go over to the blue buff camp and after you've slain the large monster, you will get a blue buff, and you may learn more about blue buff from other people later, but it's not really all that great of a buff, honestly. Anyways, the point is that this particular buff is different from the smite buff. So if you actually did cast smite on that large monster, it would restore a large portion of your mana. So that's what that does, like maybe 40% of your mana. I'm not sure exactly how much it restores, but it restores a lot. So that's pretty sweet. Now, and then there's others. Maybe not all of the large monsters give them to you. I don't know if the river monster actually gives you a buff or not. But when you do slay it, it does like do this. I want to say morph to. It becomes a ward. It scurries into a particular point in the river and becomes a ward, so that your team can see that area, the little area around the ward, obviously. So that's pretty nice. And of course, the enemy team can actually see this ward. It is a visible ward, however, it is not damageable. So that's interesting. Regular wards are damageable, but you have to be able to see them with detection, such as pink wards or whatever else. I think pink wards might be the only detection in the game, but I'm really not sure. Oh, there's some abilities. There's some champions have some, but they're kind of rare, I believe. Anyway, so I mean, and I'm just talking about vision and stealth wards when I'm mostly talking about wards. It's a little bit different from the Shaco wards. But anyways, so yeah, smite can give everyone on your team buffs. You just walk into the jungle. You don't even have to kill the monster. You just smite it and bam, you got the buff. You can just walk away. So that's pretty cool. Kind of like a Hand of Midas sort of, or Helm of the Dominator. Only instead of actually getting the entire creep to use or just stealing some gold, all you get is a buff. So that's pretty nice. One of the buffs I think is like a bash, kind of like Slardar's ability, or Faceless Void's time lock. It's something like that. And then there's things like that. So they're pretty nice buffs, honestly. They're really cool. And then what else? Oh yeah, the red buff one. If you smite it, it'll give you health back. So that's pretty sweet. So actually, yeah, I want to say not all the smite benefits will necessarily be buffs. But maybe that's just the red and the blue buff. I'm not sure. I don't think you get a buff for smiting the dragon or baron, but I could be wrong. But you do get buffs from killing them. Actually, you get team-wide buffs for killing dragon and baron. Those are like special monsters. Anyway, those special monsters will go down easier to your team if you have more smites, is my reasoning. So if you have more people with smite on your team, you take that down much more assuredly. However, even with that said, there are still quite a few champions that are popular, that are good at sniping those, taking out, stealing, if you will, the kill on the dragon or the baron, even without a smite. So, it might not be that great of a theory after all. It just depends on whether or not the other team can shut that particular sniper down or whatever. They can control the pit well enough. Then, that makes a difference. But, yeah, and of course there's all these other spells that are really good too. So, yeah, I just wanted to talk about those two major, or just a few of these spells. Mainly the smite I wanted to talk about because it's really awesome. It deals, true damage immediately, and then, of course you can either kill it or don't, and because you may get benefits from it. But generally you use it to help you get through the jungle faster. And it's really good, with those objectives with the dragon and the baron. So remember that stuff. And by the way, the baron, his full name is actually Baron Nashor. Baron is like actually a title. So Nashor is his name, and somebody said that it's an anagram of Roshan. So they kind of like, there's actually not very many homages, to the past Dota, but there are a few, and that's one of them, I guess. Anyways, Um, moving along in this episode, I also wanted to talk about Irelia. Oh yeah, and I guess Master Yi and Kayle. Okay, so let's go back to the Champions tab and let's find Irelia. Where is she at? Irelia is a champion I'm looking forward to purchasing. Not one of the. She's not a high priority, but eventually I do want to purchase her. Okay, so her abilities are pretty interesting. Alright, her basic is really fun. I think this is my favorite part of her. Reduces duration of all disables for a nearby enemy champion. So, this is actually an attribute that is not present in Dota at all. Tenacity. So, how to explain it? Alright, let's say you get stunned by Magnus, you know? He hits you with his reverse polarity. So the reverse polarity, it has its effect on you, right? It stuns you for like, I don't know, like 4 or 5 seconds, whatever. Let's say you have up to 50% tenacity. She doesn't have quite that much, just with its only ability, but she can actually boost it multiplicatively by adding on other types of tenacity. Up to like some 80% or so. If she has like every kind or whatever, so there's that. But the main thing is if you only have 50%, then that's going to reduce it by half, basically. So you'll get out of the reverse polarity sooner than the rest of your allies will, is what that's going to mean. So now actually, even though they give this to this champion, I want to say it would be really useful on like a Rubik, for example, wouldn't it? Because your Rubik could then be like, oh yeah, I'm going to steal the reverse polarity and then use it against your team, blah 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 blah. Or maybe I'll steal like your Guardian Angel and cast that, you know, and protect my team, and so on and so forth. You get what I'm trying to say? Like, I feel like this ability would be very good on a support. With that said, people don't play Irelia as a support. So, you know, after I've bought like my 4 or so champions that are high priority, you know, I might consider purchasing her and trying her out in that support role. The only thing is, I would have to be buying support items because she doesn't actually have any supportive abilities. She's basically all damage is how I want to explain her. I'm not sure how accurate that is, but that's pretty much what she is. If I were to say that she's anything like anything in Dota 2, the closest she is to anything in Dota 2, well, a lot of champions in League of Legends, you can't really do it like that. It never works. So, let's just go through the abilities one at a time. So there's the tenacity. She gets that automatically. It's her basic ability. She doesn't have to learn it or anything. Now, her first ability is Blade Surge. So, I'm not sure if I remember exactly what this is.
Ionia shall not fall.
Isn't it kind of similar to this one? Oh no, that's different. Okay, so this one I want to say is basically her finisher ability, because if it kills the target, the cooldown refreshes and it refunds like half the mana or whatever. So that's pretty cool. So it's actually it's faster, I think, than this.
Ionia shall not fall.
It looks kind of slow, but it's really fast. But maybe it's faster if you're actually closer to it, and it takes longer if you're farther away. So it might be the same speed all the time, but it's just you arrive sooner if you're closer. Perhaps that might be the case. I'm not sure. But anyways, I use it while I'm clearing minions sometimes, and it can be pretty nice for your last hitting while your damage might still be low. And of course, it can be great if your allies manage to destroy enough of the health bars of your enemies, but they're not quite finished off. You can start finishing them off with this. Also, she can help herself out in that regard. She's kind of a solo damage hero. Oh, that's who I could compare her to. She's kind of like Zeus, because she's just a bunch of damage. Okay, so her ultimate is well, she'll she actually twirls a bunch of blades around her, which actually kind of gives the opponents a warning that her ultimate's ready. So I mean that's kind of neat. Whatever, it's not exactly good for her, but they're just straight line attacks, like in whatever any direction you please, and you throw 4 of them, and it's within a certain amount of time. So kind of think of it as Sand King's ultimate, only it doesn't actually disable anybody. There's no slow effect attached or anything like that. But it's pretty cool because it actually steals life from the opponents. So that's pretty neat. Um, how, I guess they scale with your attack damage. At least I think they do. Maybe they don't, but they do deal the physical damage. So if you want to lessen the amount of damage she can do against you with this particular ability, you will pick up some armor. Um, anyways, uh, yeah, it's pretty sweet because it allows her quite a bit of survivability. As people are banging on her, she's throwing these blades, and of course, if all the opponents are grouped up into small spaces, then it's a lot easier for her to steal lots of life because she's hitting more targets. So it's definitely something that's more dependent on like positioning of your opponents and like a surprise factor and that kind of thing. So as you might imagine, Flash could be a really good ability, a summoner spell for her to actually be using. Um, as I discussed, everyone has these summoner spells that they can choose from. Whereas her, get her element of surprise, she could be using that. Is what I'm trying to say. Yeah. So, yeah, very good, very good. Now she's actually a really popular top laner. People, they usually send like just one champion to top lane, and this person's supposed to be able to deal with multiple threats in whatever way that's good for them. And in her case, she does it by life stealing. So you can kind of think of her as a little bit like Wraith King if you want. Where the heck did she go? She's grayed out because I don't own her. There she is. So yeah, pretty sweet ability. So it life steals, and of course you can buy life steal items. That way your regular attacks as well as this, I guess, will give you some healing. And you can also get spell vamp too, which helps for any magic damage that you end up doing. So it's not really like spells like this. Life steal. So in other words, the equivalent of morbid mask in Dota 2. It will proc off of physical damage spells. So, like for example, Slardar's Bash does like 100 physical damage on the 4th level, I guess, or something like that. Then you get a lifesteal that. In Dota 2, you wouldn't be able to because it's a spell. Of course, for Ricky, that is, I think you maybe can lifesteal that. I know for anti-mage, you cannot lifesteal the mana break even though it's physical damage, although in I'm not sure if she's actually doing, if any of her spells do magic damage or not. Blade Surgery, Equilibrium Strike might have some magic damage in them, I'm not sure. But she does true damage, she does physical damage, that much is true, for sure. So this ability right here, Heat 10 Style, basically, how do I want to explain this? It's kind of like, well, I want to say activating like the old Tusk ultimate, because you activate it, and then it's like, all of a sudden you're stronger, right? Oh no, it's more like Lifestealer's Rage, but you don't have any magic immunity. And instead of having attack speed, you're like life stealing basically, but you're also doing true damage like Spectre's Desolate, only you don't require uh, them to be alone. So okay, wait, what? Okay, yeah. This is one of those abilities that has a passive and an active. So once you start learning it, you will passively be stealing damage. Stealing life, doing true damage, whatever, however that works. Oh, no. You restore yourself. She's not actually stealing life with this spell. That's the other spell. She's kind of complicated and it's kind of confusing. So Heat 10 Style, she actually just like she heals herself just by attacking, so that's technically not life stealing. It's more like the reverse of battle hunger for Max, you know. She just, and it's always on too. So every time she attacks something, she's healing herself. So it's kind of like picking up a regeneration rune, only instead of it just healing you up to full, over a course of however many seconds, until you take some damage. It's instead it's going to force you to attack if you want to heal yourself. So it's pretty cool, and of course it actually makes you do true damage each time you attack, which, as I said, is effectively like Desolate. So now it's got an active part which boosts the passive, basically. That's all it does. So of course once the duration of the active's over, then you're back to regular passive. So there's no actual downtime on the passive, unlike the ability that Shaco has that we talked about in the last episode with the slow that he has. So it has some downtime, kind of like the mortal strike from the Skeleton King, Wraith King. It had some downtime too after you'd activated it while it was still in cooldown. But if I remember right, Irelia has no downtime on her life gain. Now the interesting thing, though, it's somewhat unfortunate about her, is that her life gain doesn't scale with anything other than attack speed, obviously. You can't boost it by building attack damage or ability power or armor or magic resist or anything like that. None of those stats are meaningful for boosting the healing. So that's a bit unfortunate. Perhaps one day they will eventually change that. But for right now, a lot of people consider her overpowered, and if anything, they just want to nerf her. So who knows? Maybe they'll nerf her. Maybe they'll rebalance her at some point and make it so that this scales. So anyways, she's a pretty cool champion. She's got another ability that, it's actually a really short range ability, and she just casts it on an enemy champion or unit, I guess, too. And it either stuns or slows, basically. So if she's at any kind of a disadvantage, or she doesn't quite have the advantage in health, I guess is what we're trying to say. If she doesn't have an advantage in health, then it just slows them. So basically, if the person's really low and they're trying to get away, she might be able to slow them down and kill them off. So that's fine. But if they're trying to kill her and she's low, she could stun them and hopefully, build up some attack speed, maybe activate some items to do so. Because some items, when you activate them, they can give you a boost of attack speed. Some of them, they can make you steal life from the opponent, like instantly, which can be cool. So, like, for example, what do we got here? We want to go for attack speed, damage items, or something like that. Okay, so Blade of the Ruined King deals physical damage, equal to their current health. So basically, like Lifestealer's Feast. So that's what this item does. It's pretty expensive. And then it also has an active though, so instantly deal 10% of the maximum health, which is unlike Feast because it's not current health. And this is pretty cool. So if she's getting low, she can just activate that instantly and get some health back. So I can imagine you would cast something like this after you've stunned them, and then maybe you could even activate this item, which will give you a 40% attack speed, which is pretty crazy, for 6 seconds. And of course even some movement speed, so then the guy won't even be able to run away either after he's stunned. So yeah, you activate, those 2 items on her could probably be really good. And yeah, it's nice because then she could turn it around. I guess you can kind of think of it as Sunder, in other words, because it just kind of turns the fight around. But the thing of it is she requires items. Without items, this ability is basically useless. There's not much point in it. You're not going to get in range. Without flash, you're not going to get in range, and so on. Of course, you could probably get in range to cast this spell also if you use this other ability that increases your movement speed, the summoner spell. So you could use this one perhaps instead of the flash. You can save your flash for your ultimate perhaps and use this one to get in range for that. Or there's probably a number of other things you do. You could even just cast that other item that I talked about, because it gives you the 20% movement speed, and then that would allow you perhaps to get in range. And the 6 seconds still lasts a pretty long time, so that would probably be worth it. So yeah, like she scales really good with items. I guess it's the bottom line. Attack speed items really benefit her, like those 2 that I showed you, and I'm sure there are probably some others. She also benefits obviously a lot from like health or armor, magic resist, just because she's got lifesteal. So the harder she is to take down, that's great. I mean, she's really tanky, especially since she's really hard to disable because the disables don't last very long compared to other champions. So really fun champion, totally unlike anything in Dota 2, really. And moving on, here's a champion I really don't like as much, but he's only like 450 IP, whereas she's like 4,800. See, that's how much IP I have right now. So I have to gain like more than 4 times that much to be able to purchase her. But she's not the one I'm gonna pick up next. So I purchased Callista. I'm gonna purchase 3 others that actually cost around the same amount Irelia does, if I remember right. And after that, then I'll buy, I'm not sure who else. But anyways, moving on. Master Yi. So this is a much cheaper champion. So if you're just playing regular like matchmaking games and you're not playing ranked, or you are, and it's just everyone generally owns the cheaper champions for the most part, you're gonna see this guy a lot because he's one of the cheaper champions. He's a really interesting one. They've reworked him a bit, so I'm not sure how much some of this is still relevant. But this will like boost his magic resist and armor, and I think it actually might, like the Garen ability, it might scale with your magic resist and your armor. I'm not sure, but this is really this is what so he heals himself. So it's a pretty cool ability, because it forces him to stand still, unfortunately, so it's not as fun as Juggernaut's healing ward, not by a long shot, but it does kind of boost him up. So it kind of leaves him vulnerable, but if you've got the right build, if you're far enough away from your opponent that he's not attacking you anyway, or his attack power is too low, or he's run out of mana, or whatever the case, if used in the right situation, it could be really, really frustrating for your opponent to deal with. So it's nice. And then he scales really well with attack speed, because This ability, basic attacks reduce the cooldown of this ability. And this ability is really sweet because it's basically like a miniature Juggernaut's Omni Slash. Or actually, it might be more appropriate to compare it to Ember Spirit's Sleight of Fist. But yeah, it scales off of his attack damage, and apparently it deals bonus damage to minions and monsters. So it is pretty similar to Sleight of Fist. I'm not sure if it scales really well with Cleave or not. I might have to try that sometime. Because if it does bonus damage to minions and monsters, you get Cleave on him and do it with minions, monsters, and champions. That might hurt a lot. So I should do some experiments with that. But anyways, then he's got this ability here, which I'm not exactly sure how it works, but it might be very similar to like Desolate and the He-10 style from the Irelia, in that it gives you true damage. Or it might turn all of your attack damage into true damage, but I don't think that's the case. No, I don't think so. It just gives you some bonus true damage. But it's pretty sweet because that true damage might be critically striking if you use Alpha Strike. Because it says Alpha Strike can critically strike and deal bonus physical damage. So I'm not sure if the Wuju style does actually get applied to Alpha Strike or not. But it does passively activate his attack damage anyway. So really, I'm totally blown away by the mechanics of Yi, and it's kind of why I wanted to include him in this episode, because I'm hoping some people can explain him to me, because his abilities seem more complicated than they need to be. But anyway, and then his ultimate is like, it's kind of like from, I want to say that the only thing I know that's similar to this is actually from Heroes of the Storm, so I guess it's more like Blizzard copied Master Yi. But in any case, this ability just makes him a really good chaser, I guess. One interesting thing about it, if he already has this ability active, you're not going to be able to cast slows on him like Shaco's third skill, right? Because that does damage and slows, so you won't even be able to damage Master Yi, unfortunately, because it makes him immune to slows. I'm not sure if that's intentional. They might decide to fix that in the future. I would like it if they did. It would be nice to be able to cast Shaco's dagger at him and still deal some damage. But, you know, whatever. It's up to them if they actually want to balance this champion properly or not. But anyway, yeah, it boosts his attack speed, movement speed. Like I said, it kind of makes him a chaser. You can kind of think of it as like Abaddon's Frostmourne, or I'm sorry, what's it called in Dota 2? I'm thinking of the Warcraft 3 Dota's name. But yeah, it's like Cursed Blade or Mist of Avernus. No, Curse of Avernus, maybe? I don't know. The Mist Sword, something like that. Damn. Anyways, it's kind of like that. So that's kind of cool, but you have to activate it, so it kind of sucks because it's not a passive. But apparently, if you are getting a kill, and I'm not sure if this is while it's active or not, you can reduce the cooldowns of your other abilities. So you can start meditating again, you can start alpha striking, you can activate this ability, which apparently has a passive too. So she's pretty confusing, because this is a passive and it has an active, and this might very well too. I'm not sure. And then of course he's got this basic ability, which is obviously passive. It's like every 3 or 4 attacks. I'm not sure exactly how the math works. It makes him attack a second time. Like I think sometimes. Well, anyways, this does boost your Alpha Strike cooldown basically. So one interesting thing about the game is, even though there is a limit to cooldown reduction, that being 40%, that is the base cooldown reduction. Stuff like basic attacks reducing the cooldown is like triggers basically, um, which means that this is independent of the 40% cooldown reduction. So even though there's a cap, you can definitely have a higher cooldown reduction than just 40% by utilizing things like the just the basic triggering of the abilities. So yeah, a champion like this can be really frustrating for people to beat sometimes, because they'll be constantly triggering their abilities over and over again. Especially this guy, because this particular ability basically makes him go invulnerable. Like I said, it's like a miniature Omni Slash, so it's crazy. So he's pretty strong. His heal does scale off of ability power, I believe, and then his other abilities pretty much they're scaling off of attack damage more or less. And then the double strike could potentially scale off of ability power if you had items like Nashor's Tooth, which I'm not sure why you would buy it on him, but I guess if you wanted a source of ability power to boost your healing, it would sure be useful for that, because it gives like 60 ability power. Where is it? Yeah, there we go. And it gives you 50% attack speed, which is a lot. So it actually gives you 20% cooldown reduction, so it takes you halfway to your maximum 40% cooldown reduction. So this is probably a pretty decent item on him, but it's only the one ability that uses the ability power, so it might not be all that useful. But if you're gonna get an ability power item, that might be one of the ones you'd get. Here's another cool one though that would be really good, and it's also really popular for a lot of champions, although I think it's a bit more expensive, not too much more than this one, but it's great because it's basically like a free Aegis of Immortality, more or less. Keeps you alive more. You do have to activate it though, which is a bummer. So you make sure you're not disabled, and you have to remember to actually activate the item. A pretty nice item. So that's another source of ability power that you could possibly pick up. Like I said, like maybe his meditate scales off of the armor. I'm not sure if it does or not, but obviously if you have more armor and somebody's trying to attack you while you're healing, he's definitely going to be doing less damage if he's trying to do physical damage to you. So it's not a terrible item at all. I would say these are probably my top choices for ability power items on Master Yi. And there's probably other stuff that would be good too, I suppose, but I'm really not sure. Maybe like Queen So's Rage Blade, because it can, the attack speed can be pretty useful, and then it's got Lifesteal and Spell Vamp. I don't know if the Spell Vamp would be useful or not, because I don't know if he actually does any magic damage. I don't think he does. So, but one interesting thing about the Nashor's Tooth is it actually has a passive that deals bonus magic damage on hit. Of course, it's reliant on your ability power, and he's only got the one ability that scales on the ability power. So ultimately, it's probably not too useful of an item. But even just 15 damage bonus itself probably is still solid enough reason to buy it, I guess. Even if you're not, the 15% of your ability power might be a small number, and that might be fine. So even just itself, that's like another, I don't know, 7 or 8 damage on top of the 15, so it's more like 22 or 23 or something like that damage. And so that's pretty decent. But if you there are other items that will do more if you don't have ability power, but we could talk about that when we're talking about other champions. For the most part, you're going to want to be buying attack damage items on him. So things like the Bloodthirster giving you some lifesteal might be nice, but Mercurial Scimitar is probably more likely to be something you'd buy, because it keeps people from locking you down, and then you could even run away if you have to. Infinity Edge is really good, obviously, because it gives you critical strike chance, which allows your Alpha Strike to crit. And then, of course, this item will also do the same thing. And although this one also increases damage of critical strikes, so that's really nice. And then this is the Cleave item that I talked about earlier, This is the base cleave item, and this is the more advanced one that you can upgrade to. It's kind of like Basher and Abyssal Blade, more or less, but they just do cleaving. So and it doesn't give any mana regen, so don't get that impression, but it does give some health regen. So there's that. Anyway, what else do I want to talk about in this episode? Kayle. Okay, so unlike Master Yi and Irelia, well, actually Irelia is like a hybrid champion because she does do some true damage and some physical damage. I'm not sure exactly like what other items you would build on her, but I would imagine she would make a good jungler. So if you got like this item, it lets you do, after you've smited someone, you can do true damage over 3 seconds. So actually, I'm not exactly sure how it works, but it appears like when I've been using this on Warwick and I use my ultimate on someone, they take like 0 damage while I'm using my ultimate on them. Once my ultimate's over, it's like bam, they're like dead. They start like their health rapidly drops or whatever. So like as Irelia, that might be really useful because you stun somebody and you keep attacking them, or or maybe your ally stuns them too. Like their health is still really high if you're the only one attacking them, because you've casted the special smite on them. So all that damage is gonna pile up. So I think doing that true damage, like if you follow up your stun after somebody's stunned, because that's how you're getting into range, it could be really good for her, I feel like, and it would just make like what she would normally do as physical damage be true, which means you'd be ignoring armor. So now that I think about it, she could be a really good jungler. Even maybe you could buy Smite as a top laner for her. I'm not sure. It might be a cool idea. But anyway, so she's, I guess what I was trying to say is actually both her and Yi are actually hybrid damage champions, but they don't do magic damage. At least I'm pretty sure Irelia doesn't do any. But it's physical and true is their hybrid. Now, Kayle is different because she's magical and physical hybrid. So this champion is also a hybrid in another sense because she's kind of like Troll Warlord in that she has a melee and a ranged form, or like Lone Druid, a melee and a ranged form. So her third ability activates her ranged form, which gives her splash attack and bonus magic damage. So this will actually scale with attack damage, obviously, because it hits an area. And it also scales with ability power. Now the ability power ratio is something like 30 or 40%, I'm not sure how much, so it's not 100%, but I mean, as you might imagine, since it does have a duration of like 6 seconds or so, the more attack speed you have, the ability power that is applied to it is pretty darn useful. So it doesn't really need to be 100% to still be good. With that said, I believe the attack damage scaling is significantly higher. It's more like 70 or 80 or even 100%, or maybe it's like it has to be bonus attack damage. I'm not really sure. It might be bonus attack damage plus percentage. I'm not really sure what the scaling is, but it's pretty reasonable, and I think it's generally higher than the AP scaling. So it's nice, whatever the numbers are. And then we want to talk about her basic ability, because first of all, it's obviously better with attack speed, but it's got a cap. So what it's doing is it's gonna maximum reduce the target's armor and magic resistance by 15%, basically, is what it's telling us. So it starts off, both of them are reduced by 3%, 6%, 9, 12, 15%. once you've hit him the 5th time. So this is pretty cool because it allows her to be a nice support champion in another. Of course, we're not talking about Troll Warlord's ultimate, where it's making everyone attack super fast, but it's kind of more like Rubik's passive. The difference being, it's only going to work on the champions that you actually attack, although with your ranged form, when you're doing splash damage, you could supposedly hit extra champions. But it's still requiring you to do stuff, whereas with Rubik, it's just working as far as boosting your team's magic resistance like normally. You don't have to do anything. So it's pretty fun basic ability, honestly. So I should really give Kayle some more playtime and get a bit more used to her. I'm thinking I'm probably going to be playing her as a jungler more often, if I can get away with it, because that has actually been relatively successful for me. But yeah, right now other junglers are really effective, so I think she would be better if your team needs a more of a supportive jungler, then she could fill that role. Right now, I think the most popular supportive jungler is Sejuani, perhaps. Another one might be like Jarvan 4. But Sejuani is one of those champions that's high on my priority list to purchase. I'm picking her up soon. But in the meantime, I might be playing some Kayle for supporting as a jungler. So anyways, moving on to her other abilities. Her first one allows her to slow an enemy. So this is very similar to like Wraith Fire Blast, only it doesn't actually stun, it's just the slow. But it lasts like 4 seconds, I believe, so it's a pretty long time. So a Wraith Fire Blast, stun for 2, slow for 2. So it's pretty similar, it's only slow. So that's basically what that is. It's basically Wraith Fire Blast, there's not much else to it. I would say it doesn't do damage over time, but the instant damage that it does deal will scale with your ability power. And then so the more ability power you have, the higher the damage your slow will do. So that's cool. But even as a slow, it's strong and can technically be scaling with your attack damage, because as you're chasing people with your ranged form or just attacking with your Holy Fervor, you're reducing the enemy's armor, and you're getting more attacks in because they're not getting away. So that 4 seconds is still 4 seconds of slow, and it's pretty high amount of slow too, I think. I'm not sure what it is, but I think it's like 60% or something. Anyway, really fun ability. So, and then our next one, Divine Blessing. It the healing amount will scale with your AP, but it's actually a pretty small amount. Yeah, I want to say this one wasn't 100%, and neither is this one. Like, none of her AP scales are 100%, but all of them scale with AP pretty much. Or actually, no, the ultimate doesn't scale with anything, come to think of it. But anyways, Divine Blessing, the healing itself does scale, plus the movement speed does as well. But it's also a really small number, I think. So, it's actually not too terrible now that I think about it. You can actually get champions to get pretty fast, but I think after there's like an upkeep on movement speed boosts, kind of like in Warcraft 3, how there's upkeep on your income. So keep in mind that there's only so fast you can make people. But I'm really curious to see how fast she really can make people with this ability if she gets in a fight. AP. So I'm really curious to find out about that. But anyway, it's nothing like Bloodseeker. I mean, don't get me wrong. It's not going to be super amazing, and there's no possible way it can be because of the income. I mean the upkeep, but it's still pretty cool. Now, that's an instant ability, and it's got pretty decent range too, I suppose, compared to like Soraka's heal, for example. Although, unfortunately, the cooldown is pretty aggravating. So if they could buff the cooldown, that would be nice. But they're probably not going to, so whatever. In that case, you gotta consider how long her cooldowns are. And honestly, although a lot of people prefer playing her AP, I think she might be better playing, buying primarily attack damage items rather than ability power items. Just because the cooldowns on her abilities are ridiculous. Not so much the Righteous Fury. You can pretty much have that up like 24/7. But the other abilities, definitely not. So keep that in mind. Especially her ultimate. And I actually don't like her ultimate. I think it's one of the most underpowered abilities in the game. One thing that's interesting about it is it's not like Master Yi's jump, that makes them invulnerable. Just like the Sleight of Fist. In that, okay, sometimes if you do the Sleight of Fist, you won't necessarily. Or actually, here's the thing: with Ember Spirit, you actually return to where you jumped from. That doesn't happen with Master Yi. So there's an actual vulnerability behind that ability, and that you could end up like on the other side of the creeps that you were attacking, basically, or minions, I guess is what they call them in this game. So I guess the point is there's a certain amount of risk involved in his type of invulnerability. So in that way, Kayle does have a certain amount of advantage over him. Plus, she can also use her invulnerability on an ally. It doesn't have to be herself. But this is a big but, huge drawback for Kayle, and I really feel like they need to address this, is it's only making people immune to damage. And maybe this makes it a little bit different from Master Yi, because maybe Master Yi can like die while he's like being ignited, for example, like that ability that I showed you earlier, doing true damage over 2 seconds or 5 seconds, however long it was. Remember that? 70 to 410 true damage over 5 seconds, granting vision of the target and reducing healing effects. Well, that's useful on Kayle to a point. I mean, it makes it so her second skill isn't as effective, on herself or on the person that's ignited or whatever. But at the same time, she could just activate her ultimate, and if she does that, then that true damage is not going to have any effect, unfortunately. But the problem is, intervention is a shorter duration, first of all, than ignite is, and that's not even the big but yet. I haven't even gotten to there yet. But the big but is it doesn't stop disables. So you can still get stunned, you can get knocked up, everything pretty much can happen to you except for getting damaged. So like if somebody gets like stuck in a black hole, you could be like, "Oh hey bro, you're not taking any damage." It's like, so what? So this is like basically, I want to say, like, it's kind of like, and it prevents just every type of damage too. It prevents true, magic, and physical. So it's really cool, but it's really limited, and a lot of its limitation comes down to the cooldown. The cooldown is ridiculously long for her skill set, what she's supposed to be doing. It's just crazy. The duration's very short. It's like 1 or 2 seconds, and that's it. So yeah, she's kind of a nice champion, but I certainly wouldn't purchase her, over other champions. Not most of them anyway, certainly. But it was given to me for free, so by Riot. So I do play her from time to time. But her ultimate itself is definitely one of the weakest in the game. And I think that's pretty much it for this episode. That's pretty much all I wanted to talk about. Oh, I also wanted to comment. Let's talk about the YouTube comment I got. I just got one so far on one of my videos, and it called me traitor with a D. I'm not sure if you meant traitor or not, but if it was about if it was about me going over from Dota 2, yeah, I think I kind of already talked about it in the beginning of this video. There's not a whole lot I can do when I'm getting like 2 frames per second or whatever while I'm trying to play the game. So that's just not cool. If I pick up a rune and the other guy from high ground can deny it, like before I'm even able to click on it, that's kind of not right. So yeah, gotta fix up computer issues or whatever. But in the meantime, League of Legends pretty much runs fine, so I'm just playing that. It's just how it is. So yeah. Talk to you guys later.